You better do the right thing every day, and you better not write things that are inappropriate in email or text or whatever, because even if you're joking, because if it gets splashed on national news, it's not good. If you just do the right thing every day, you don't really have to worry about what the appearance looks like later.
Welcome to the CEO Pick Show, where we uncover the essence of extraordinary leadership by interviewing CEOs with over 90% approval ratings on Glassdoor. Hello and welcome to another episode of the CEO Pick Show. And I'm Dave Osh, and I'm really welcome to the show Krista Snelling, the CEO of West Community Bank.
West Coast Community Bank.
West Coast Community Bank. Thank you for correcting me. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
We just checked in a minute ago and we saw that we live not far away from each other in kind of Bay Area.
Yes, although I would argue that my home in Santa Cruz, I work in Santa Cruz and live in Capitola, is a very nice proximity to the ocean, better than East Bay.
That's true. It's like 80 degrees here and you probably like have this cool breeze from the ocean right now.
Yes, it is. Having been here for 5 years, I moved from Sacramento. And so I grew up in the heat and I went to college in the heat and grad school in the heat. And so living here, I'm freezing all the time. So
me too, actually. I moved here from Singapore, from a tropical, and I still haven't adjusted for 10 years to the weather here.
yes.
Northern California is cold, guys, if you haven't heard about it. Not as cold as other places in the US, but it's not as warm as it's shown in Hollywood movies.
Yes, it depends where you are, but it is freezing where we are. Not today. It's actually pretty nice today. It's 72 or something. It's lovely.
I remember when connecting with you on LinkedIn, this is how we met, I noticed that we have a little bit of a similar career path. Are you a CPA?
I am. Are you?
Me too. And you work at the Big Five, and I'll dig deeper into that. And I worked also, my first 5 years of career was a CPA firm and all the way to a CFO of a large company. And you too. Yeah.
I did not know that. That's so fun. Yes, I was at Arthur Andersen for 5 years and I was there when they went.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to start there because I
Yes.
saw, oh my gosh, Krista was in 2002. She went through the downfall, and maybe many of the listeners even don't know what happened there in that kind of one of the biggest event in the US economy at the time.
Yeah, it was crazy. I worked in Sacramento, which was a small office. And so obviously, and I was a manager, wasn't really high enough up to have any kind of inside track as to what was going on. And so we were in our office sort of learning our fate by like listening or watching on the web CNN every day, right? Of like what the latest headlines were and stuff. It was pretty traumatic. And then we all quit on one day in a prearranged thing and went to work at KPMG the next day. They had like a massive onboarding and we had 50 people or something that transferred over there.
So for those of you that haven't heard, the connection is actually through the Enron fall. And because Anderson was the auditor of the company, they have been connected to that and lost their license to audit companies. And since I was at the time also pretty much in this domain, it was like a shock that it was the biggest or closest to the biggest firm in the world in that area just vanishes in one day. It was shocking all over the world, actually.
Well,
right?
and because it's a whole business that relies on trust, right? And if they don't have that, they don't have a business and it's gone. It was traumatic.
I'm curious for you, actually, when we take that lessons that we have, and today, fast forward 20, almost 25 years, fast forward, we see the business world have changed dramatically. And what did you learn? What is when you reflect on this time, even so you were not at Enron, you were in another frame, you heard about it the first time on CNN. What is your perspective about it, say, so many years after?
A few things. I mean, one of the things that was very clearly beat into everybody's head at the time was there was a lot of embarrassing, I'll say, correspondence, like emails and all of that, that came out as part of that, just the whole drama, right? And people's emails splashed on CNN and this kind of thing. And it's like, the number one thing that you learn is you better do the right thing every day. And you better not write things that are inappropriate in email or text or whatever, like, because even if you're joking, because if it gets splashed on national news, it's not good. And so it's both. It's like follow your conscience, right? Like I've worked at public companies before. I've been the controller of public companies and had to make judgment calls about accounting treatment and stuff like that, like when there's gray areas. And having lived through that time, frequently think to myself, like, okay, am I happy to defend this decision on TV? Right. Like these people at Arthur Anderson ended up having to do and never in a million years thought they were going to have to do. If you just do the right thing every day, you don't really have to worry about what the appearance looks like later.
That's such a to do the right thing, and you don't need to worry about that. Tell the truth, you never need to worry about what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's what I always tell people. I'm like, well, when we're like trying to figure out like, how do I say this to a client or employee or whatever? And I'm like, well, I like the truth. And hey, why don't we say X, Y, and Z? And I like that because it has the benefit of being true. It's always my favorite phrase. I say it all the time to my kids, to my husband, to my team. It works.
I'd like to circle back to what we talked about before I clicked the record button earlier, which I'm quite embarrassed actually that you are the second female CEO in this season out of 20. So definitely there's a challenge here. And I publish a lot about it because I firmly believe that women are better leaders. And that's why this is the paradox that I see, that we don't see enough female in leadership, and definitely not in the CEO, not at the C-suite, except of maybe some kind of lip service position like HR, whatever. And I just share with you that I was so impressed when I saw that very few CEOs on Glassdoor, which is usually by employees. Some of them left the company, some of them maybe even fired, gave you 100% approval rate, which is almost unheard on Glassdoor, with company 4.5 stars, 94 positive business outlook, kind of amazing reviews. If I'll just look at something that I read there, that people feel like the leadership is approachable and easy to talk to and inspired by. So yeah, very rare. So I'm curious if you find one thing that actually make that click in kind of traditional industry, right? You're in the banking industry. Usually people have some different thought about it. What do you think is that one secret that you have?
I think a lot of it is, for me personally, is authenticity. Like, I don't really have a pretentious or fake bone in my body, which at times, I feel like maybe I should, right? But I had a chief marketing officer that I worked at my prior job, and I would say things to her like, okay, well, when I was CFO and COO, and she was chief marketing officer. And I would say, okay, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to act. I'm going to be super serious during this conversation. And she would always be like, Krista, don't do that. Like, don't do that. Like, that's not who you are. Like, I have a very relaxed manner. I'm just very real. And I think people respond to that. Like, I like people and I'm an extreme extrovert. If you look at my predictive index, I'm a persuader, which is my single highest strength is on extroversion of the 4 things that they do. And I like people and I make sure that they know that I like them. And like I tell my kids all the time that the fastest way to get someone to like you is to like them first. So, and get my kids to do that. And they do.
How many kids do you have?
I have 2. I have a son who is 22, who is a high school math teacher, and he's awesome. And I have a daughter who's a junior at Colorado College in Colorado Springs.
Beautiful. There's so much to learn from parenthood to leadership and vice versa. It's like I see parenting as leading in many ways. I have 3 kids and yeah, they challenge.
How old are yours?
Mine is 35, 31, and 28.
Okay.
So they're all crossing into the 30s. So I have something, it's fascinating what you're saying, about this authenticity, because I am actually believe that's such a core strength and still almost doesn't exist in the corporate world. Even when you were CFO, COO, you find maybe I need to find a different voice that will look like more corporate, like more CFO, like more COO, like. So why is it so difficult to be ourselves? I find it very difficult to be ourselves. What makes it so difficult? For most people, to be themselves. It's kind of an interesting paradox, isn't it?
Yeah. And I feel, I would have gotten there, but it was helpful for me to have someone say it out loud to me so clearly, like she did. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, okay, she's right. Well, and there was a long time where at my prior bank, when I was the number two person and I was named as the successor to the CEO and all of that. And I worked for a very, very, very good CEO who I kind of grew up under. And he's still a mentor and a friend and all of those things to me. And I used to see him and he's so good, right? And I'd be like, okay, can I do that? Like, and I'd be like, okay, well, he's so good. Like when he speaks in front of big groups and he doesn't really prepare and he's so good, like off the cuff and whatever. And I'm, when I speak in front of larger groups, I'm a little bit more preparation in order to get there. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can just stand up there like he does. And everybody said, Krista, like when you become CEO, like you're going to do it, but you're going to do it in your way. Like you're not going to do it copying someone else. Your ways is a little bit different, but it's also good. Right. And I had a zillion people say that to me. And I was like, oh, okay, that's helpful. So I like that advice too.
And the one that gave you the feedback, be you, is probably noticed that when you try not to be you. So I assume that you found your authentic voice before that moment. So it means like you were highly authentic, and when you try to deviate to become that different persona, it was quite obvious. So what really helped you when you were younger, before CFO, before controller? I had a sense, and we met in the first 30 seconds. I feel connected with you because I felt it resonated with me, this authenticity. It came across, although we're in a virtual studio, right? And it's
Yeah.
not like we are meeting in front of each other, but it came across and you touched me in a way that not other interviews is touched. So what helped you to become that authentic self when you were younger? What helped you to become you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, well, when I was a very young person, we're going way in the way back machine, my maternal grandfather, who was like my favorite person on the planet, was like me. Like connected with people, liked people, got to know people, was good at making people feel comfortable, all of that. And it's so funny because the older I get, and like when I was a kid and I would see him interact with people, like we would go places and we'd be in line at the movie theater or whatever. And by the time you could tell how, that you're old, right? When you're talking about being in line at the movie theater, because nobody does that anymore because you buy the tickets online. But anyway, and like by the time we got to the front of the line, he would be like best friends with the people in front of us in the line and the people behind us in the line. Right. And I was always like, oh my God, he's going to talk to everyone, kind of a thing. But it was a real superpower of him. Right. And so I grew up with like my favorite person on the planet having a very easy time interacting with other people and realizing that and watching him like people first. And when he liked him first, they liked him. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then it made me, like when I was in college and early in my career, feel confident about putting myself out there with people and just acting friendly towards them and trying to form a connection. And then it just worked. So after a while, because sometimes it doesn't, but I would say 95% of the time it does. And so that just made me feel good about it. But it worked. It's a balance at work, right? Because like my first job, so I went to college and I have a bachelor's in math and economics. And then I went to grad school to get a PhD in economics. I wanted to be a professor. And then I fell into a job at Arthur Andersen. And then I became an accountant. And so my parents didn't go to college. And so I go into this turbo corporate world. And my parents had really good jobs. Like they were union telecom workers, right? So we had plenty of money and we weren't rich or anything, but we had plenty of money. But I didn't grow up in the business world or with anybody talking about business around the table, and I didn't go to fancy restaurants and fancy resorts and all of that. So I had to figure out when I was in my 20s how to navigate that world. And partly the way that I navigated that world was like copying what other people did, but also just like making friends with everybody, because if you're just friendly and real, like people like you. And then what you find out is people will help you when you don't know if they like you. So I would say I took advantage of a lot of that when I was younger.
And so many people like to be liked first before they give their like, or want to be loved in order to give their love. Well, actually, just love and you feel loved, actually. It's just kind of the notion of what is interesting, by the way, one fun fact, I study economics too. That was my undergraduate.
Okay.
You're like my sister in the other side of
I
the.
know. I'm like, how did we not know each other before?
Yeah, but what actually is interesting because it looks like you, so that it's easier for people that are people to connect with people. It's interesting to see most of them will go and study something in social science, in psychology, because they're people. And you went to the more science, math, economics, eventually into the finance world. And yeah, interesting. It's just really common.
Yeah, I have always been a giant math nerd, like ever since I was like 5 years old. And so it's led to, I can't even tell you it happens less now, but when I was CFO for a long time, people would frequently say to me, "You don't act like any CFO that I've ever met before." And I'm like, "Thank you. I'm going to take that in the manner in which it was intended, which was as a compliment." Although I have a lot of friends who are CFOs who are super fun and super cool. So I'm slightly offended on their behalf, but I'm not going to act like that. So,
Yeah, I had the same sentence again. We have never seen, you're not a typical CFO and not typical CPA. And the reason for that, because I was before going to college, I was a fighter pilot. I flew jets for the Air
oh,
Force
wow.
for 20 years. And so I was like 10 years older. So I went to then all my other students, but living in a different world, going to war where people go to class and all kind of had deployed in. So it was very weird experience, but I found out later on that I was the first fighter pilot that went to study accounting and economics because it's so what?
So different. Yeah.
It's like, is it sweet? I thought sweet. Yeah, I love math. Math was my thing. I love
Yeah.
numbers, and I thought that it's a good thing. Yeah, I like to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. So it looks like you got some hints that you're going to be, because somebody told you when you will become CEO, da da da. So was it a career path for you? Did you see that path? Because it's not common for CFOs to become CEOs. They are not the default selection for such a position because of the other domains that kind of. Yeah. What led you to that?
Well, I will tell you. So when I was working at Arthur Andersen and KPMG in my 20s, and then I was controller of a bank and all that, I was hyper focused on being CFO. And I just didn't think very much about being CEO. And then what happened, and so I got out of I got out of grad school in 97. So I started at Andersen 97, then I worked at Andersen slash KPMG until 2003. And then I was the controller of bank starting in 2003. So in 2013 to 2017, I was the CFO of a real estate company, and I'd been CFO of a couple companies before that. And the CEO that I was working for was a private equity backed real estate company. And the CEO that I was working for was escorted to the door through a mutual thing with the private equity guys and whatever. And a ton of people came out of the woodwork and said, "Are you going to throw your hat in the ring for CEO?" And I was like, "What?" Like, no. I mean, I like it literally, people were saying this and I was like, "What?" So obviously, and they were like, "Well, why not?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm not doing that." And I literally had not thought about it. And then after a couple years of working there, I had been at a bank before and then went back to that bank. And at that point, the CEO, who is my mentor and friend that I mentioned earlier, said, "Okay, I want you to come back to the bank, but this time, instead of just being CFO, I want you to be COO and CFO. And I want you to I want to name you in my succession plan and, I'll groom you and we'll talk about the things that you need to do in order to get there. And I was literally like this, like, whatever. Like he saw it in me and took action for me earlier than I ever did. So what I say now, because I speak it, because, there's only like 7% of bank CEOs in this country are women. So I do a fair amount of speaking at like women in banking stuff. And I always say, ladies, you need to see this in yourself and don't have other people say it to you first, right? Which is what happened to me. The people when I was at the real estate company, a few different people said it to me. And then my boss said it to me about taking over when he retired. And when he first said it, I was, okay, yeah, whatever. Okay. And then after a couple years, I was, okay, like I can actually see this at this point. But I would say that was combined between the first time somebody approached me about being CEO and me really like feeling like, okay, I could do this, was probably 4 or 5 years, which is kind of lame. I tell ladies, don't be me. Be bolder than I was. So, and then it was so funny when I interviewed for this job, I had told the CEO that I was working for that these guys had approached me and he was like, oh, you're going to get it. And I was like, well, I don't know. I've been CEO before. And he's like, no, like just from the first minute, he was far more confident about it on my behalf than I was, which also I would argue lame.
Well, sometimes we need this backwind to help us, because I moved from a accounting firm to a controller position. Like we had such a similar
We have the
career.
same background.
Yeah. And the first time in the boardroom, I look at the CEO and say, I want to be him. But over the next 5 years, he passed from the CFO. So I decided I need to go into operation and end up CFO, COO. And only when I become COO, I was promoted from a COO to a CFO. And I thought I wouldn't do it from a CFO
That's
position.
interesting. So you went controller, COO, CFO?
No, I went controller, CFO, COO, CEO.
Got it. Okay. That's kind of the same as me.
And I have a lot of people, I coach a lot of CFOs and financial controllers say, how do we? And I said, you need to expand. Even if you won't become the CEO, expand your horizon beyond finance to see it and understand a business from a perspective which is much wider, which I think that CFOs usually do that to become how can you be a really good CFO if you don't understand a business inside out and also be really immersed into because one CFO told me that it's very political position by understanding the personas and deal with tough situation. You have the board, you have the audit committee, you have like, especially if you serve on, and I saw that you also sit as a director in the Federal Reserve Bank in San Francisco. So you have also board experience is like, it's a complex system and a multiple stakeholders to deal with. So how do you see your people connection superpower helps you in that complex system of stakeholders in life today between the oppositions?
It's all about just having relationships with people and having them trust you, right? Like, I know when I was interviewing for this job, I was like, well, and I was talking to him and I was like, well, I don't know. And da 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 da. And I've never been CEO before and I've never done this before and I've never done that before. And he said, Krista, he said, you know enough about bank operations and all of that. And the only thing that matters is that people will follow you. And I know they will because I've seen it. And I was like, oh, okay, and I think he's right in a lot of ways because you have to be able as CEO, right? You have to be able to interact with the team members and try and make them feel comfortable with you and not be scared of you. The power of your words when you're a CEO is a thing. And you have to be able to interact with your clients, which I had calls with 2 different clients yesterday, and I had one yesterday. I'm doing that pretty much every day. So you do have to have the bank operational and financial foundation, but it's more of like one of our clients today reached out to me because he had an issue with our online banking and he was super frustrated. And so I asked our ops people to do some research and then come to find out the research was more of a user error issue on his part than anything. And so I am really good at calling someone and feeling their pain about how difficult, how frustrated he was about our online banking system, while at the same time making the point that it was user error in a very polite way and making both of us feel good about the interaction by the end.
And that's actually the true essence of being authentic. You mentioned earlier that people need to trust you. Many people come and say, well, I want people to trust me. But when I think about trust, and it's not something you're doing, you're not coming home. How's your day, Krista? Oh, I was trusting and people trusting me all day. Right? It's an outcome of something. That something is actually being authentic. I think that something happened in that authenticity that create that connection that enable you also to tell the truth. That was a user mistake, right? Without shying away from that. So it's kind of vulnerability, be easy to tell the truth without being afraid of the consequences. Maybe he won't like me if I'm telling that to user. Maybe he will go to another bank and so on and so forth. But also develop that, use that connection to feel the pain, be empathic and reframe.
And you know this because you worked in public accounting, but that was actually something from back in the day, right? Like I spent 6 years in my 20s being somebody's auditor. And everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people are scared of auditors. And so you learn, if you are successful in those roles, you learn how to have a good bedside manner and how to ask questions of people and have them not feel like you're attacking them. And this conversation this morning that I had with the client of ours was exactly the same thing. I would meet with clients in my 20s and I'd feel like they were kind of doing something wrong. And I was so, but like, I'm their auditor, right? So I could have gone like guns blazing at them and said, oh my God, this is wrong. Why'd you do this, you idiot? But instead, I go in with my favorite phrase, help me understand what we're doing with X, Y, and Z, right? And then it's just a gentle way. And then once they start explaining it and you can ask gentle questions, and then they realize it themselves, and then they tell you that there was a mistake. And that's like you get to the same place as you would have gotten to by going guns blazing in there. But everybody feels good about the interaction after. Like this client and we're best friends now.
Yeah. I'm curious on the first days of change that you became the CEO, because it was like two changes at the same time. You were first time CEO and also in a new organization that you didn't work before. At least you were not promoted from within, right? You were both from the outside.
Right.
And so that's kind of a two challenges. One that I didn't have because I was promoted from within,
Yeah.
which brings many other challenges. Suddenly, all your peers become direct reports on one day. And so that's a different challenge. But for you, what did you learn? What can other people can learn from that experience of having that double whammy of like, oh, I'm a CEO, and which you didn't expect, by the way.
Yeah.
And everybody else expected except of you. And it's an organization now you need to build trust. And as a new CEO, what was that for you? And what do you think did that help you to overcome the
Yeah.
challenge?
The thing that was really hard for me is I'm a super curious person. And I spoke at a women's education luncheon thing the other day about the curiosity as my superpower. And I gave at this bank on my first day. It was deep COVID, right? It was March 1st of 2021. I just had my 5-year anniversary. So we couldn't even have like a gathering, because what I probably would have done is like had a reception and everybody come meet the new CEO and shake everybody's hands and all that. But we couldn't do that because it was COVID. So I did a little Zoom thing, a company wide thing, and the chairman came on and introduced me and talked a little bit about my background. And then that day I said I kind of talked for like 15, 20 minutes, just introducing myself and saying how excited I was to be here and all that good stuff. And I said, listen, here's one thing that all of you guys are going to learn about me really quickly. It's that I ask a lot of questions. And I'm just going to tell you, it's me, not you. It's just what I do. Like in my personal life here, I'm just curious. I like to learn about people and it's just what I do. So what I had to be very careful of, and you would have to speak to the people who work for me to find out how successful I was. Most of them are still here, is making people like asking questions without making people feel like they were doing something wrong. You know what I mean? And I'm very mindful of that because I know that my questions come like a fire hose, right? And I don't want to make people feel like they're on the stand when they're talking to me. But I know that sometimes they do feel like they're on the stand because I have a lot of questions. But that's how I learn. But there was a lot of stuff like when I first got here, right? Like I'm real good at bank operations. I was COO of a high performing bank for 4 years before I got here. I was been CFO for a couple decades by the time I got here. But I would be like, so how do we, and then you just start peeling to understand like what's happening. And then by the time you get to like the fifth or sixth question, people are like looking at you, are you calling me an idiot? Which I'm not. I'm just trying to get the information. But that's where your delivery with those questions goes a long way. But sometimes, no matter if you're just asking that many questions, it's hard to deliver it in a way that doesn't make it sound like people are on the stand. But I will get the information. I will not apologize for being curious. And if people, I have had people work for me before who just left because it was just too much. And that's okay. That's a win-win for me because I'm a very detailed person and details calm me down. That was like one of the things that was different about me at this bank compared to the CEO who retired. Like this bank was really good before I got here. And I like to tell people I didn't break it after I got here. We've maintained the goodness. But the other CEO had different strengths than me. And his thing is he just wanted to know it was handled. Oh, such and such issue occurred. Okay. And the team would just look at him and say, okay, I got it. It's handled. And I'm like, that doesn't work for me because right now, what I have right now, when you say it's handled, I have 45 questions just spinning in my head right now that I want to know the answer to. And what about this? And you think about this? And what about that? And blah, 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 blah. So I had to like spend some time over the first year of me working here, getting people used to giving me more details is not bad. It's not showing weakness. It's not too much information. It's not any of those things. It calms me down because when I get the details and then once I'm like, I agree that the issue is resolved, I get those details, I crossed it off the list and it's out of my head. And if what I hear is it's handled, it keeps it spinning. And when things are spinning in my brain, that's not good for me or the person on the other side of the issue because I got to get it out. And the way I get it out is by understanding it completely and crossing it off the list, which is, I think different CEOs have different styles. And I do feel like I've only been CEO for 5 years. So I do feel like probably when people are CEO for like 20 years, they probably have less of the patience that I have to understand the details because they're just like, I can't get in that level of detail, but I'm not there yet. I don't know when I will be. I'm a detailed person.
And how do you make sure that the details don't bog you down into too much details? How do you actually enable yourself to be in the details and also out of the details, in the details and the big strategy? Because you need to have both, right? How do you
Yeah.
make that? How do you integrate that to that? It's a polarity, like two opposing poles that
Yeah.
pull you to different directions. Sometimes you're too strategic, sometimes you're too details, and you need to have both pretty evenly, right?
Yeah, you do. Well, and I have to pick where I want to get involved in the details because sometimes I just don't. But like, if it's something where I feel it could have strategic ramifications or a client ramification, I'll be more inclined to get in the details. So I don't all the time, but when I do, I need all of them. Like this client issue that I worked on today, it appeared right on the surface, like my team told me that it was a user error issue with our client. And I was like, okay, listen, before I call this client and have this conversation, only to have him say something, some new piece of information or whatever, I don't want this client spreading negative information in the community. We're a community bank. We're very small, right? So I want to make sure that this guy leaves the interaction with me feeling really good and is going to go talk to his neighbor about how he had an issue and he emailed the CEO and she called him back. So in that particular instance, I will go very, very, very deep. I will also go very deep on things that are potentially revenue generating or potentially saving us money. I guess I pick and choose what I go deep on, but I go deep, I think, on more things than most CEOs do. But it is interesting, like when I talk to my husband at the end of the workday, I go from I don't do transactions, I don't do day-to-day work. So when I say like I'm going deep into my understanding of the details, not actually into doing the details or doing the research. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah, of course.
a distinction there. But then what happens is it's funny because we have a new chief operations officer who just started with us last May, and he's wonderful. And after a couple weeks, I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" Blah 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 blah. And he's like, "Oh, it's good. The team's really good. Like, there's some things that we can work on, and blah 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 blah. It's really good." And I'm like, "Okay." And he said, "I keep asking people like, well, what do you think about like working for Krista?" And I'm like, "Oh God," because you know what everybody says? Krista understands how this bank works. And I'm like, you know what? I take that as a compliment because I do. I do understand how this bank works. But that is helpful to me. I mean, I guess probably you'd have to ask the executives who report to me, but I think it's probably a knife that cuts both ways because sometimes I might know too much and it makes their lives more difficult. But there's not really an instance where I don't know enough. Like, that's not a thing.
Well, if there's something that is knowing too much, I'm not sure there is, but it was such a beautiful insight actually, because people, and you explain it so well, because I know a lot of people that really bog down in the details and they go to all details, and you're very strategic in that. So
Yes.
you pick, actually, if I will reframe what you said, I pick my details based on the strategic implication from either anything that impacts the bottom line, top line or bottom line. I'm there going and look at the process of inquiring and asking question as a process of peeling to getting to go deeper and deeper. And I work with a lot of executive and I coach them that they do the inquiring process and they're really curious, but they are not going deep with their curiosity. They're going shallow. So they're going and they go from topic to topic and expand the data, but don't go deep to root cause, to deep understanding,
Yes.
and also deep understanding of the person across of them, which we listen with two ears. One is that the data that reveal, but also we're always dealing with people actually. So we need to listen carefully. What's their worldview? What's the lens they are using when they interpret the data? Or so I love that notion of it's the curiosity is actually like peeling that go deep. And when I coach teams, they just don't go deep enough.
Yeah. So now this client, right, today had this issue with his online banking. And I spent 30 minutes yesterday with a couple of my ops folks and going deep into understanding why his issue has happened. So now when I'm out and about and somebody says something to me, I'll be like, well, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Like if there's ever any issue with this particular system that comes up, because I'm out in the community all the time. And so clients come up to me like today. I was actually at a memorial service this morning. And I had a client who I had never met before, who one of our other executives introduced me. And she said, well, I have a topic for you. I feel like the button on the bill pay, blah, 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 is kind of too hard to find. And you guys should think about that. And I was like, okay, that is interesting feedback. Thank you. But it's like, it is like talking to people, right? And because I go out there and I form these connections and like I somehow managed in 5 minutes to make this lady today feel comfortable enough to dish out her feedback on our online banking product. I'm like, great. Now I can take that back to the team. And I'm like, thank you for telling me. It all like comes together. It all comes sort of like weaves around and then comes back to the same place, which is authenticity and relationships, right?
Yeah.
I think
It
that's
was
where we
such a
started.
wonderful conversation, Krista. So our previous guest, the CEO, Anthony Romano, left you a question here. We have
Oh,
now
did
a new tradition that every CEO leave a question to the next one, and you will leave at the end of the show. And his question was, what is the one thing in your business that you are not doing today that if you did will make the biggest impact? That could be financial, could be culture, could be hiring process, could be customers. What's the one thing
Oh God, that I'm not doing that I wish I was doing, basically.
that will make the biggest, that if you did, will make the biggest impact? You can take it into the future.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like the future in general is all about the people. And it would be, but I do focus on hiring really good people. But one of the things that we are constantly debating is when to bring on the new person, especially a revenue generating person. Like, what is the right time to do that? Or even like a high level back office position, and you're doing like a cost benefit analysis. Because at this bank, we're very efficient. There's a ratio that's like, how many cents does it take in order for you to generate $1 of revenue in banking? And our number is very low. It's in like the low 40 cents, which is 90th percentile for banks of our size across the country. And so looking at how do I, on like that marginal sort of back office person, I feel like my team would say that I frequently wait too long to spend extra money on headcount that might ultimately save you money, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. Do you have any question you want to leave to the next CEO on the show? And now rip them off.
My most recent leadership topic has been a lot about curiosity. So I would be interested to hear from someone about how they think their level of curiosity has impacted their career.
Beautiful. Krista, it was such a joy to have you today on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation so much, and I wish you all the best. And thank you for listening to the episode. And looking forward to see you in the next episode.
Thank you.